week's meeting with the legislature. No, that was 2 weeks ago, because I was in Chicago and Jackie was in Washington last week. And so comments on that. And then I'm going to present an outline of the final report. While we've been talking a lot about an October 1st deadline, Senator Hartley looked more carefully and said that we had a little bit of wiggle room. So we will take advantage of that. And then after that, we can talk about content that you, the members, would like to see in the final report and stuff we'd like to cover.
Ground level as it relates to collecting data. We have.
Okay. We don't need two conversations. All right. So just first, anyone with comments or thoughts on anything related to the committee and our session with the legislators?
I'm looking at B and Ron to see if they wanted to share some remarks, but I'll start by saying, you know, we had a great attendance. So Mark and Jill and Kylene and, you know, many Charles and Nicole and Kathy and like Hisham, we had such a great showing in that room. So thank you to everyone that did have the bandwidth to make it to Hartford to listen in and be seen and heard from in us reporting to the Commerce Committee. I heard our colleagues saying that it was great that we did have many other leaders apart from, you know, Rep. Curry and Senator Hartley, who are co-chairing the Commerce Committee. So we had other representatives that were present. So that was great. So one, I just wanted to start by saying, you know, extending gratitude for one, getting us to this point and being present. So I'll turn it over to Beatrice and then Ron to say some remarks too.
So first, I will second what Jackie's saying on thank you to the team. I think it was great to have the support of the, you know, the companies at the meeting and also the partners, academia. So that was great. I also was very encouraged by the participation on the legislator part. One thing that I think is very important is some of the conversation that started there around support and other ways to really bring tools to the community has continued offline, and we have seen that. And I think it's very important that we actually take that on and have a conversation with the team to further define what was asked for. Because there was this point brought up on single point of contact of support and how do we really get around some other issues that we have discussed before that are not necessarily the technology solution, but obviously that infrastructure has a lot to do with the success of this team being able to execute on that. So I think it's important for us to at some point regain that conversation, and that will be what Nicole and Mike brought up. And I know that that has been something that needs to be further clarified. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Obviously, the whole group here, you know, as Jackie said, it was, you had that great attendance. I'm always, you know, whenever I go into those types of meetings, you know, you always want to make sure, did you get your point across? But almost more importantly, did you get any grenades thrown at you? And it's always nice to come out with everybody feeling good, that, you know, generally speaking, things stayed on task. And I think the next phase is going to be most important. That's sort of the Beatrice's point. You know, what does this group, what do we want to formulate and present to Senator Hartley, and then work obviously hand in hand with Senator Hartley and Representative Curry and the others about what we'd like to see in legislation or what we'd like to see going forward. You know, obviously Paul's tied up, I believe at UConn, so he's, you know, Paul will be a main driver, I think, or at least a significant driver of this conversation as well. And you know, the other thing I look at with trying to keep things, I think we have to. You can't boil the ocean. So, you know, what do we want to focus on? What's going to be most important for the Connecticut supply base, from all the way from the universities, who are the ones engaging our talent really early on, and then moving out into the supply chain, and of course the larger companies. So Beatrice and I earlier were on a DMI call, the Digital Mall Initiative call, and now they're focused on the second kind of version around that. I don't know how any of this stuff are done in silos. I don't, I think we should be bringing all these conversations together, and maybe one or two key things that CCAT's focused on, one or two things that Concept's focused on, and then of course the academic organizations, and pick those 2 or 3 or 4 things, and we just need to go deep, and that's why I think just i4.0 working group, just the title itself is sometimes like, wow, that's like the universe. That's like the entire world that we live in now. So why, how do we break that down? And there, from a legislative standpoint, having led Senator Hartley as a champion, because boy, if you don't simplify it and you don't have your message very simple, very concise, it will get lost. I mean, literally everything has to be in not even a page, it has to be in a half a page of bullets of what we want to be doing going forward. So anyway, I don't want to need to say anything more about that, but I'm confident we all get together.
I actually will close with saying that we have to move from a very academic explanation to a very tactical, because at the end of the day, the recipients of this need to understand the so what, and what do you need from me? What's the ask? And I think it is important for us. I think the team has done a phenomenal job at explaining some of the gaps and walking through some of that. But we very quickly, I think, we need to say, in 1 year, we need to do this. In 3 years, we need to do that. In 5 years, we need to do that, with very clear goals of what that is. Because let's be honest, that requires resources, funding, people, time. So we gotta be very clear on what is it that we all are willing to do, and when and how.
One comment I wanted to just share was, it seemed like the essence of a lot of the discussion I know was around, we were kind of talking about the ecosystem, and then we started jumping to a bit of solutions with the concierge, and those were great ideas. But I think the essence of it was distilling down everything that's out there. And I think if we somehow, and maybe this is outside the scope, I'm not sure, but if we somehow could map the ecosystem and then point out, CCAT specialties and concept specialties, and we had the RSPs and all the associations and, CBAA, and if we just had a map and had what each specialty is, and then in the light of Industry 4.0, we could say, like with CCAT, you guys are always sharing, you've got the webinars on the different types of i4.0 technologies, right? So like there's a lot of awareness there. And then if we could map out, and let's say manufacturer CT or CBA have some programs, I don't know, I'm making stuff up, but if it's almost like we need the high level, 10,000 foot view of the ecosystem, and then we should hone in on where the Industry 4.0 pockets are. And then we could build out the roadmap from there. I don't know. I was just a thought as I was thinking about the meeting.
Well, Jill, you're the manufacturer. I mean, you are the ones. We're here to serve you. I mean, that's the way I think all of us look at it. We're providers. So I think your points are always typically the most valuable. And I think there's a big group of you. I don't know if what you're saying is really the same thing that Mike or Nicole and the others were saying, but yeah, I think that's where the recommendations really from you guys, those 3 or 4 bullet points that this is what we want to see out of this, at least from my standpoint, is very valuable, because we can't tout ourselves as being industry driven and responsive if we're not listening to you directly. So great points.
Thank you. And I think that too, it's, when we talked about the concierge, the example, that's just an example of what it is, of what some of these things are, these solutions are. It's like, okay, then where does that sit? And then everyone wants to be the concierge, but at the bottom, at the end of the day, the bottom line is that until we make a clear map of all of the offerings, forget about the vehicle we use, whether it's a website or a concierge, until we have a map and we have a complete understanding, we'll just keep creating these silos, because nobody can make heads or tails of everything that's out there. So we create something because we're not sure it's out there, and sure enough, it's out there in probably 2 different areas, but we're just not sure. So and then I think, but we could take that concept and then build the Industry 4.0 around it and through it. And
Yeah. B, weren't you guys, I don't know if Paul brought it up one time, or maybe it goes even back to Colin. Were they going to be working with Concept or somebody about that landscape?
We are. There is
Yeah.
an intern that has been Aria, has been talking to a lot of providers, creating profiles, and those are going to be set up in the web with that. So this is profiles of the different service providers, including some of the academia, but that wouldn't address the regional clusters, for example, the regional, the thing is, there is the micro piece and then there's the macro piece. So what the internet focus on is what capabilities that the University of Hartford has and what do they provide. But on top of that, I think there's all these associations and groups that work in tandem, and that's the piece that is not addressed by that. Maybe it needs to be expanded to that, but it's not today.
I think what Mark, I believe, last week at the legislators or 2 weeks ago said about, I think the way he put it, you have to call this to get that, to get this, to get that, to get the funding. If you recall the sequence he described to get funding for any activities, hit home for me. I think we have to simplify that. I think besides the recipe of what you do, where you can go, and what type of help, the fund that support that type of activities should be clear. Where do you go? You don't have to make 20 calls or talk to different people to reach the fund. And I think you, Ron and Jackie and Jeff and others, I think you know where that fund more than us. So I'm hoping that you can make it clear in any proposal or any submission.
I think one thing that I will say though is that we need to really be very clear on the scope of that support, because there is a question that says, where do manufacturers go for support? That is a big question. And that's when Paul will say that's the ECD, for example. I am that person. If we're talking only about 4.0, that is one piece of the problem. But if I need a permit because I need to get a permit to move mussels out of the backyard in my plant, is that us? And that's when I hear the concierge, I say, let's be very clear what that means. Is it a concierge in 4.0? Is it a concierge in technology? Is it a concierge in everything a manufacturer needs? Because that's very different. When I was at the ECD, we will get from brownfields to moving endangered species out of your backyard. But that's not necessary, and that's one place. So I think that's the conversation that needs to be had before we really decide what is the scope of this effort. On this one, we said 4.0, there's resources, but I hear I need labor. Okay, for what? Assembly people, or you need programmers? Or you need, and I think that's the conversation that as a team, we need to really cope so we don't get swallowed by the beast in one.
Okay, if that's good, I will share the initial outline of the report, and this is just meant to be starting places and give us some structure to work towards. Make it a little bigger. All right, so obviously at some point it will have an executive summary, but that comes after we have something to summarize. So an introduction. I thought we would create a Industry 4.0 introduction for the legislators. I think it's clear that what they expect and what their knowledge level is. We need to ground them on there and set a baseline. Just a recap of the working group's charge. That's essentially straight out of the legislation, so no big deal there. And then one of those charges was the comprehensive catalog of service providers. So Constep collected this as part of the effort, or the initial part of the effort that went into the DECD website. We'll work at a way of summarizing that and providing the industry 4.0 partners in that working group. I don't think there'll be a lot of text here, probably an addendum pointing to something else that catalogs those and then references the broader website as a place where they'll be for longer community stay. So then the bulk of it, I think, will be on the Industry 4.0 ecosystem, the process map, the customer journey, the gap analysis. I think we should put, I just thought about awareness and outreach is something we worked closely on. Why is this not? And then from there, going on to the recommendations. And so, that's our starting point for Jackie and I. We'll obviously do the bulk of getting this work ready, look to committee members to help as they'd like to, and reaching out when we have any confusing points. But, I'll open that up to discussion for feedback on the outline and, continued discussion on the content that we should have.
One thing in the recommendations, as Ron pointed out, there's, it's just, you can't boil the ocean. So areas of focus that we're going to recommend, resources be focused on. I don't think we've really had that discussion about which areas should we be focusing on. And I guess we should have that before we make the recommendations.
Yep, that's fine.
If I recall, weren't we trying to survey? We've had some active whiteboarding sessions, and then I think we were going to go back to the manufacturers as well as to, if there's 9 i4.0 core disciplines or technologies, like what are the most important? We've heard cybersecurity, but that really hasn't been the focus of i4.0 manufacturing technology, our working group, but there are resources out there, right? There's the matching grants, there's Constep, there's other service providers, etc. So if we focus on if we don't have a large contingent here on the line, but we might have, some of that information. But as Jeff is, populating some notes, scratching things up, if we want to, hear from our academic partners as well as, Jill and yourself, Mark, representing manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, we did try to look for some external inputs on that, and we continue to do it. NAM is doing a survey that I am connected with, so trying to get some highlights on that. But certainly, if we think there are areas of technology focus that need to be highlighted, that could be included.
Certainly, the assessment piece is. The Siri work is important just to get the awareness and help manufacturers, dial in where they could be seeing gains using the technologies.
Bill, any thoughts on, your particular situation and areas that seem more important for you? And I know that's just a one-off, but, take it as an indicator.
You're asking which areas of the different, like the additive and the robots and the which area? My thought would be, is it data or big data or data analytics? Because I think a lot of times, especially for manufacturers with really small ones like bead, is that until the data and the show that we have inefficiencies and different things, then if it shows us that there's an action to take, we're more likely to spend the money on the capital to purchase a lot of it, to go the next step to the higher expensive equipment.
And so do you think you're at a position already where there's enough data collection and understanding to take the next step, or do you think that journey needs to continue first?
Well, I see. So what I like about Siri is that it'll tell you where you are in the different areas of your business in terms of Industry 4.0, and then it'll tell you where increasing technology will make more of an impact. So maybe we have an area of our shop where we're not at Industry 4.0, but it's not really urgent. Whereas over here, we're really behind. I think with the data, it just seems like with a lot of companies are implementing new ERPs. And I think that can be such a distraction that Industry 4.0 is kind of, next in line on that one. But so we implemented a new ERP years ago, and we're still, trying to get it where it needs to be in terms of data validation and what we need out of it. I guess this is a very long-winded way of saying that I don't know if I don't know how the data I don't know exactly where the connection is between what the data should say. I just know that when you're buried in data, you have a hard time making a decision on which technology to implement next.
No, that's fair. Some of that was a little selfish, as I certainly see that as a key thing, but maybe thinking it's more further down the road.
For us, it's IIoT, the stuff that generates the data, and how we implement that in our equipment, both current equipment and retrofitting both ours and others, other customers' equipment to generate the data. So selfishly, I would vote for an IIoT resource. It's kind of underlies the big data analysis piece.
Actually, I agree with that, Mark, because we're frustrated with the data we can get. That doesn't mean that we couldn't get more if we had better connectivity with our machines and our systems. So I would agree with that.
Okay. Jackie and Ron, any perspective from you and who you work with, or Ajar?
At least from my standpoint, well, Jackie, go ahead.
I was going to have Keisha speak.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll go.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I'll wait.
Or not, then so go ahead, Ron. I'm trying to read the room.
Okay.
Prompting to say something.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's, again, I'm trying to key in more on Mark and Jill's, comments. I think at CCAT, we have found the data, like the IoT, when you look at some of the other things that we've been focusing on, IoT does seem to be a bit daunting, just so I know the understanding of it. Again, I use these terms, again, whether it's a term, Industry 4.0 or now IoT. I think Jill and Mark and some of the others the companies that are participating, I feel pretty much at a different level than many other companies. And it does get confusing to them about, even what they're going to be doing or what data they should be looking at and all that. So I think that's going to be a long journey. So I do think the area of focus is we want to address, when you look at workforce and training, I think that's key. It's not something on here, but we need to be looking at training. And then I think automation is going to be very key to what's going on in the processes. And I think CCAT seeing that certainly on the design side, again, on the digital technology side of it. When it comes to the assessments, again, huge importance to that, up front. And what's the best assessment tool? I think, how do we remove friction so companies can get the right assessment for what they need at the time in a very, very convenient, seamless way. So these are all open for discussion. I'm just giving you some feedback of different things that I've seen and heard along the way. I just try to put my hat on, and line myself sort of with Mark and Jill and Mike and Nicole, and just say, okay, if I'm in their shoes, what am I trying to do? I've got to be real efficient. I've got to drive costs. I've got to drive time down, and where are the areas are going to be most beneficial and provide an ROI to us. So I'm still learning. I'm still getting feedback a lot from companies, and that's why I want to just make sure that we're being driven, so to speak, by the companies. We're listening to them first and foremost.
Yep.
I'll second that workforce comment, Ron, that, we can have all the technology in the world, but if we don't have a technical workforce that knows how to work with it, fix it, install it, we're never going to see it pay off. So, getting the workforce educated on these technologies from an early start is important. And as I mentioned at the legislature meeting, we see it at the technician level. Not, we're doing a good job producing engineers, and engineers produce the tech, but it's the technicians who implement and utilize it and maintain it. So preparing the workforce for the technologies that's here and the technologies that are coming is a very important issue and should be stressed.
Yeah, the more I think about it, I think it's a workforce transformation too. It's not, we're going to be looking at a different workforce, which I think is, aligned with what you say, Mark, right? It's, moving away from assembly and more to technician and higher level of thinking. And that's obviously going to bring some strong challenges with it.
It's a catch-22, right? I mean, if yes, you need to train your incumbent workers with the new technology, but you're also not going to attract any workers if you don't have new technology. So it's like to do both sides.
And so going back to your earlier comment, Jill, how did that go with your interns and the retention of them, and, bring it home a little?
Yeah, well, I think the beauty of the interns is that you can see these smart, capable students come in, and you can see them grapple with the old technology and make suggestions and get involved with the bringing on of the new technology. And you kind of can see if they can marry the old with the new, if they can learn as much as they can provide feedback. And if they can if they have both of those skills, we end up hiring them. So when we're kind of trialing them, it's more or less their ability that resilience, the ability to handle broken processes, the ability to create new ones, those types of things. So that's been awesome for us. So we're getting all our new employees now, and then we grow them within. So once they come in, we start them somewhere, and then we try to grow them internally, because we can't find some of our higher level positions either.
If I may, I think one issue with workforce development that seems to come to my mind is that we again speak about workforce development concerns in one bucket, and some are short term, some are medium, and some are long term. So I would say today, how do I find someone that can come into this process and make it work? That's one problem. That's an immediate problem, and it has a lot of layers. The other one is what you're saying, Bill, how do I get these interns to buy into the process, to bring their ideas, and hopefully to stay? So that's a million. And then how do we really go in Connecticut to bring a new generation forward with that thing? And that almost goes K to 12. That's not just the guy that goes into technology. How do we begin getting our K to 12s to begin thinking about this as an option in their life? So it is, I think, part of it is how do we break it in pieces, and how do we establish realistic goals for each piece? Because we cannot stop production until we have people that can do this work. So, I think that's the piece that I think this committee also should think about. What is the proposal from the different pieces? How do we solve the problem for people like you today? How do we maybe transition to the next 5 years, and then how do we plan for the future for the state? And I don't know the answers. I just think we need to think about it.
That's a good point. That's actually, those are really good ideas for the universities to think about in some of their, curriculum, is having some classes where they're taking, maybe the case study. And I know with the capstones, like for example, we had some students come in and evaluate our inventory and, set up a barcoding system. But I mean, case studies where you're taking old processes and old technology and bringing them into the new versus just students walking in and saying, okay, you're building a robot or you're starting with new technology. Maybe if they're starting with old technology and bringing it in up to speed, that would be a really incredible skill for these students to have as they come and intern at different companies too.
If I may, I just have a philosophical answer. Actually, getting kids in high school to learn this technology or the options for them in the future is possible only if companies start promoting it and promising kids that we will support you to go through college. Right now, you are either going to technical, which are, they're going to do all technical, not just working for a company in Industry 4.0, whatever it is. There are other businesses looking for them too, or going to college to get a degree. And always the impression that going to college to get a degree, you are not going to have hands-on experience, which is really not true. It's changing every day and doesn't change with the generation. When you have a class coming in and the technology comes in, it's very hard. But I think, I want to say it goes back to the company promising their technical workers that we will support you to go earn your bachelor degree, because they know they will make more money eventually in their life if they have a degree comparing to be a machinist.
Well, the tuition reimbursement we do, and I was thinking, I was at a CBIA board meeting, they were talking about how there might be new legislation. Do you remember this, B, where they're going to kind of force employers to do the tuition reimbursement? It's like the carrot versus the stick. Why don't you promote the companies that are doing the tuition reimbursement, and then the good employees will go there? Like, so we need somewhere where there's a list of all the companies that do the tuition reimbursement, and then so students know that those are the, I don't know, it just seems like it should be a reward and not a punishment. But
we actually started doing we started a loan repayment program, not just a tuition reimbursement.
Oh, cool.
It's like to get them, it's kind of the hook, we pay it out over 5 years. So we get, they have to think about, if they're going to leave us, they're going to leave their, their loans or take their loans with them as opposed to have us pay them off.
Smart.
I think one thing that we should think from from a committee perspective is to what extent are there good models that we can benchmark somewhere else? We've been talking a lot internally, but what are the other states doing and what are other countries doing? For example, I know totally different environment, but in Germany, and Ron knows this, you go to Hanover Fair and the technology you see there is phenomenal. But one thing you see, which I thought it was very interesting, is every school brings their children to Hanover Fair. That's kind of, and every vendor at Hanover Fair cannot leave on the weekends because it's considered public days. So if you leave, you cannot go to Hanover Fair again, because they consider structurally requirement that industry connects with schools. It's not a choice. If you want to be at Hanover Fair, you have to open on Sunday. And be there for the children that come in and answer your booth. It's not like you abandon the booth like we do at the air show. They're not. You stay there and they come and look and make sure you're there. So obviously there are models somewhere else that may or may not be better, but I think maybe this committee should recommend that we look at domestic models, external models that can bring some learnings into the state, because I think we all have experiences individually. But is there an opportunity for the committee, for the group, to go and collect a model that we can bring in-house? In South Carolina, when they brought BMW, they created a whole structure for workforce with the community colleges. The state gave money. If you came to bring this company, they guaranteed that they were going to have the workers they wanted. Can we create that for our industry here? I don't know. I mean, I thought that maybe we need to look externally a little bit and bring some best practices that we can recommend.
Folks for engaging in the chat too. We're both listening and engaging in that way. So I think, we haven't really had that depth of conversation regarding workforce. So it's, great for them to set precedents of what we want to do, right? Because we're chartered to craft recommendations and then feed it to, Paul and other stakeholders that are going to, take things into action, right? So recognizing, how we could solution for some potential, I don't know. I don't want to, speak ill of, the system at large, but right, like the visual map of the state of Connecticut, like where we're going to focus, micro, macro, providing folks with solutions. And so this report that Jeff's been crafting, the outline, what we know to be true is we want to do something with it, right? We want to provide both the service providers in academia, right, that feeds that workforce pipeline, and then the manufacturers that are going to take in that pipeline for the future, right? We want to be able to, march forward with action. So I feel like what I want to ask of people is, some of this input of, what types of incentives for students, right, to keep them in the workforce. This could, then translate into what's next, right? That hasn't been put on the table, but we want to be able to equip people with resources, right, as we're trying to map out this macro ecosystem for the state. So if I could, just plant the seed to say, Mark, what you were talking about, right, is of interest, we could then go back to the SMM community and say, what else is out there? Because that's going to drive students to where is the cool place to work that aligns with their values as young people, that is going to, have all of the bells and whistles. So it's this multi-generational, multi-faceted workforce that we're trying to address. So I'm thinking out loud and speaking at the same time. So thanks for sticking with me, but I feel like we could have each other feed in, so please share with Jeff and myself, just drop us an email with some of your additional resources.
I still feel there's a huge gap in the 2-year technical training. There really aren't any programs that are really teaching i4.0 technologies yet. Like I said at the meeting, CNC machining is not advanced manufacturing anymore. We need to be looking at creating programs that are looking forward, not looking behind. As far as having programs to be having students learn about IIoT and I think we're doing a good job with additive, but we need to be forward looking as far as what we're teaching the kids and the programs we're providing for them.
All right. Any additional comments?
I do. I just have one
Yeah, go ahead.
about what Mark just said. What we teach, we have advisory boards, programs, college. We have advisory boards from industry. I have meeting today. I have CEOs of companies. I'm vice president, the same thing. All universities do that. So it is what the engineers from those companies are telling us we are teaching. And, depends on how fast you can change your program. So what I'm saying, Mark, I think your feedback to those programs is essential. And you might be one person, but how many people are going and talking about that?
Well, I think, Hisham, I think we're doing a good job in our four-year institutions, the engineering track students. We have great programs at UConn, and Central's doing a great job. You're doing a great job. It's the non-four-year university talent that I'm talking about. We need to get programs for them. The engineers don't go on the road and install machines. They don't troubleshoot machines. We need that second level of two-year program to be producing the talent. That's really the void that we see. And I don't know if Jill, you're seeing that too, but for us, it's really the technical workforce, the guys that put the stuff together and go on the road and fix it. That we need.
I think the question is, do they have advisory boards? Do they have people like you being listened to, meet with them? Are they changing their curriculum?
I'm on like a dozen advisory boards for Tunxus and the CTEX, and I'm trying. And there's other people that are doing it, but we're not seeing much motion in those areas, in both CTEX and the community college level.
I see.
It's kind of the cart before the horse. There isn't demand yet, but there's demand on the employer side. There just isn't student demand because there isn't awareness of the level of career opportunity without having to go to a four-year university. That's where I think more awareness needs to be out there as to, hey, there are jobs for the non-university bound student, technical minded, hands-on type people.
So I think Mark and I think that's a critical recommendation. If we feel that way, it's a critical recommendation of this report to say we need a hearts and mind campaign per se, or added to that to say more than you need to be in manufacturers.
I think we have a huge opportunity at this the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing at Tunxus. It's a greenfield place. We don't have a program like that yet. We shouldn't be building another Astuntuck Industry 3.0 training center. In my opinion, we should be looking at building an Industry 4.0 training center. And that's a great opportunity.
And that's the recommendation, that we connect those dots and put a lot of effort into. I think Ron and I will share as chairs our big direct, at least thought for the team is that it has to be 1, 2, 3 things that the legislators can understand and put funds and effort behind. So if we say we need I'm just throwing it out there. We need an awareness campaign, or we need support to this center in Kansas where we're gonna do this, and it's gonna, here it is. Later they can go and appropriate $1 million to do it. If we just talk about generals, I love our legislators, but this is a part-time job. They have businesses to run and things to do, and they want to do the best, but we need to make it very clear what the call to action is. I think. Ron, am I?
No, Beatrice, I've been listening. It's just great points by everybody, but Beatrice, it's sort of kind of circling around to a conversation at the very start of the meeting, and I know we don't want to belabor this anymore, but Jackie and Jeff both need, they need some feedback that's extremely tight. And literally it just has to be the couple sentences or a bullet or two. It has to be so simplified and drilled down. And this group, though we may at this point say, okay, everybody throw their stuff out there, but I do think if we go in with more than just a couple key things that we're trying to move, it will get lost, it will get sidetracked, and it won't be good. So I don't want to reiterate that point, and certainly what B just said. So I hope this group can say, look, let's get the manufacturers. These are the 3 things, 2 things, 3 things, whatever it is. And let's lay them out and be very simple and concise. It can't be complicated.
Well, and what we told the Commerce Committee was the theory assessment. And I know Mike's point was we can't do 4 a year. We have to do 40 a year or 400 a year. The theory assessments will help companies or SMMs understand where they stand and where they can make an impact. And then they go out and find the solution that CCAT has on additive or IoT or whatever it is. So maybe, to your point, Ron, going back to the beginning, until we're moving from awareness of Industry 4.0 to now what? Assessing our companies in order to take action. We can't just willy-nilly take action or, oh, that technology sounds fun, let's look into it, because something will happen where they'll get burned, they'll spend a bunch of money on the wrong solution, and then they won't want to do it again, or they'll be gun shy about it or whatever. So I mean, maybe the very simple thing is moving from the simple statement we give the Commerce Committee, we need to move from awareness to assessment in order to create the action. My thoughts.
No, Joe, I think it's key, and I think it's the assessment is the right word, and it does have to be targeted, and depending what the company's gonna be looking at. And again, Beatrice and I just being at an earlier meeting today, a major company in Connecticut made the comment that some of the suppliers are going to want to move forward because they're at that readiness level for something. Others that may be making something that is a bit simpler, let's just say. They don't necessarily need that company to move up technology-wise just yet. So I think probably moving the point together about all these programs is, we have to just understand where a company is, but not just that, is what they're making, like what are their customers, and are their customers asking them, for instance, or requiring them to get up there. I think we need to focus on companies that not just have the wherewithal like your company, but also have the actual need or demand by customers to say, and then, okay, let's go attack those, because now we know we've got a good ROI. We should have a very willing and able company to partner with us. So it's kind of we're all in the same row in the same direction, instead of us going into companies saying you have to do something and they simply don't want to do it. So working with you on these things and the other manufacturer, I think, is going to be key, but also hearing maybe from some of the big customers that are saying, yeah, this is what we're going to look for from our supply chain is key. But, we just have different levels of assessment, I guess. Is that what I'm saying? I think we agree Siri is a very big one and a broad one, extremely beneficial, but there may be simpler ones that are quicker and more focused on something. But assessment at the end of the day is key for anything we're going to be doing. Is how do we understand where that company actually stands in the readiness level? So anyway.
Right.
So that's important, though, I guess. That would be something to present to the committee is, somehow assessing companies, I guess.
I mean, these days you could literally go on your phone and assess what like shade of clothing is best for you, right? Like there's so much technology that's out there that is at the user fingertips that gives them guidance. I know that for the Connecticut Digital Model Initiative, like that's where we want to get towards, where, a company can just answer a few questions, and then based on that we can inform them like, hey, you need IoT sensors here, or you need to focus on an ERP, or, you need a cobot, but don't let it sit in a closet for a year because you don't have the workforce, right? So, being very tech centric, using technology to help us, because we can only have so many boots on the ground through CCAT, through Concept, through others. We need to scale this up. We know that. And so, ways in which we're using technology to do that.
Jackie, I will say that is ideal. I also would say that I just went to Chicago and heard my partner MEPs, 51 of them, saying our customers are not at that level yet because they don't know what they don't know. So there is still room for both. Not everybody, Jill or Mark that have been more, or Nicole that have been more into this technology area may be able to walk through an electronic model and get a better sense. But what I heard from all our MEPs is that our target customer, which is small and medium, there is still a big number, and I would say 80% for what I heard, that still needs you to say i4.0, and we mean this, and workforce, and walk them through it, because that's not where they live. It's not that they don't know it or they want to know it, it's not where they live. They know they have a problem, they don't know where the problem is. So I agree with you that that's where we want to go. I was very much in that boat before I left. And when I heard 51 team members per se, almost 300 people saying, we're not there yet, I gotta believe that there's still a room for the hand-holding. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not a whole day, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, but not totally on your own. Maybe, I don't know that. Any comments? Because you and I were in those meetings.
No, and even more focused when we had our Industry 4.0 partners working session. I mean, even the lead states, Michigan, Purdue, Indiana, Texas, California, they're seeing the same thing, right? I mean, there is universality right now in that companies don't know what they don't know. And so doing an assessment, except for in cases of more of our early adopters, is just, most of them are self-assessments, I guess, right? So one of the advantages of Siri is that it does engage organization on a holistic standpoint, right? And Jill can speak to this, right? There's training materials ahead of time. There's interaction with many of the members. So it obviously is a larger investment of time, but I think there's a huge percentage of the population that wouldn't even understand what they're trying to assess against.
Now, what I will say is that there is a need for a Siri Lite. I totally get it. It is that I will put it out there that I personally feel there has to be a Siri Lite. But that said, to me, it's like financial planning, correct? Planning for your retirement. I do a lot of assessments, but at the end of the day, you need someone to tell you what do you invest on, because all I know from that is I need more money, but I don't know the next step. So I think that's where we need to really be in the middle. But I get your point. I get your point that we are not going to get the scale we want just doing Siri assessment. I get that.
And I agree with the Siri Lite, and maybe you separate business systems from shop floor. I mean, I don't know how you would, make it, because we did it all of the above, but we did try the self-assessment in advance. And I looked at that and was like, I don't even know how to answer this. And then I thought, oh, I need to bring in this person could answer it. This person could answer this question. When we did Siri, when we had everyone in the room, and then we asked the question, we still needed Concept to kind of translate what they meant by that question. But if we could simplify it, like Jackie was saying, as almost like an intro into the Siri, is your ERP connected to your machines? Do you have what sort of equipment? I don't know, maybe if there was some sort of a precursor to, yes, you'd be a great candidate to take Siri Lite or Siri Full if we have different levels of need.
Well, and to go back to Beatrice's analogy of retirement planning, right? I mean, Morningstar does now offer an AI-based advisor, right? So there is an option to take the person out at half the cost, half a point instead of a point, but based on a lot of data and based on a lot of knowledge of your portfolio. So, those would be the two things we needed to build in. How do we be able to look at a company or have a company provide the correct information quickly enough as part of the assessment, which I think is feeding off of what Jill said, right? Part of it was knowing the right ways to answer the questions. In that Morningstar model, right? They know the right ways to ask the question because it's just your portfolio and they have access to that. So we are at noon. Again, we can create working sessions if need be. Certainly provide Jackie and I with any more feedback or comments you have. I'm sure we'll be reaching out to the group. I will share that we will hold our next meeting as scheduled on October 12th. So we'll continue the bi-weekly cadence at least one more time as we work to wrap up, maybe targeting the 15th as a point for a final report, but we'll get together as a group with what's appropriate. But we will reach out to small teams and individuals as needed to form up the report. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we good for now?
Yes. Ginger was